All right, guys, here we are, the last piece of chapter 14. I told you guys it would be really short, so here we are. Chapter 14.3 is all about population density and the distribution of populations. So 3 vocab words here. We have population density, the measure of the amount of individuals that live in a defined area. That is kind of the key piece here. It's defined area. We could talk about the population density of the high school or the town of Pelham or the county or the state. So whatever you define as your area determines how dense a population tends to be. Population dispersion is the way in which individuals of a population are spread out over an area or of a volume. And a survivorship curve is a graph that shows the surviving members of each age of a population over time. So population density is the number of individuals that live in a defined area. By collecting data about the populations of a particular area, scientists are able to calculate the density of that population. Scientists notice changes in population and they can work to determine whether the changes are the result of environmental factors or simply due to the normal variation of life of a species. This helps wildlife biologists make changes that will help keep the population healthy and happy and growing over time. There is a formula for population density. It's the number of people divided by the land area gives you that density number. So graphic dispersion. So we can graph how populations are dispersed over their area. The calculations can lead to other information about the populations. Patterns of geographical dispersion give us the ideas of how individuals of the same species interact with each other and how they interact with different species. The population for this, or we use population dispersion to note the graphical way of representing these, of how they're spread in area or in volume. And there are 3 main ways. We can do clump dispersion, uniform dispersion, or random dispersion. Clumped dispersion is when individuals live close together in groups in order to facilitate mating, gain protection, and access food source, but they very seldomly interact with each other. Now, these are all all individuals of the same species. So this family would live together but not interact with this family. This family lives together but doesn't interact with this family. They don't interact just with each other. Uniform dispersion is when you are looking at species who are territorial. They don't have interspecies communication just for mating purposes. The competition for limiting resources leads to these individuals that live at specific distances to one another where this is their area. They don't interact with this guy because if they get too close, they're going to be overlapping those limiting resources. In random dispersion, individuals get spread randomly within the area or volume. This is how humans live. Some of us live very close together if we're living inner city. Some live out by themselves in the middle of nowhere. This is the best way to describe the human population. Survivorship curves help describe the reproductive strategy of each individual species. It's a generalized diagram showing the number of surviving members over time from a measured set of births. By measuring the number of offspring that are born from year to year, we can follow these offspring until death to create a survivorship curve to give information about the history of a species, that life history. There are 3 main types of survivorship curves. There are a lot of survivorship curves, but 90% of species fall into these 3 types. Type 1 would be humans. It represents a life history that is common among most large mammals, which does include humans, whales, dolphins, apes, anything like that. It shows a low level of infant mortality or death rate in the population that gradually survives into long age. So this is time Our x-axis is time. Our y-axis is percentage of organisms that survive at that age. So if we start here, we have a lot that survive until old age when suddenly we drop off. Type 2 survivorship rate is roughly equal at all ages of the organism's life. So they all have an equal chance of living or dying. So it's typically that straight line that goes right down the center, because at any age, it's equal chance of survival, whether you're a newborn, a teenager, and obviously the older that you get, the more likely you are to pass away. And type 3 is when organisms have a very high birth rate, but also have a very high infant mortality rate. So their birth rate's high, but a lot of their offspring do not survive into reproductive age themselves. Many offspring die from predation, but inevitably a few do survive to adulthood to pass on their genes to the next generation. So this is like frogs. Frogs lay a ton of eggs, knowing not all of them will survive due to predation. So this is our graph here. It dips down really quickly and then slowly levels off, almost the mirror image of type 1. And that is it for chapter 14 as a whole. You guys do have a survivorship activity that goes along with this, so hopefully you watched this before you worked on the worksheet. And as always, if you have questions, be sure to send me an email and I will talk to you guys later.